Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on day number 139. And we're so glad that, you're here with us and we're just diving into the continuation of David's story. And oh my goodness, it's always something. So you'll see how Joab rebuked King David, and you'll see David's kindness and mercy shown in chapter 19. Then we're going to talk about the revolt of Sheba in chapter 20, and that will be my focus chapter, as well as we're going to see David avenging the Gibeonites. So that's where we're going to be for today. So let's get right into chapter 19. Word soon reached Joab that the king was weeping and mourning for Absalom. As all the people heard of the king's deep grief for his son, the joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. They crept back into the town that day as though they were ashamed and had deserted in battle. The king covered his face with his hands and kept on crying, "Oh, my son Absalom, Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab went to the king's room and said to him, "We saved your life today and the lives of your sons, your daughters, and your wives and concubines. You act like this, making us feel ashamed of ourselves. You seem to love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that your commanders and troops mean nothing to you. It seems that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died, you would be pleased. Now go out there and congratulate your troops, for I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a single one of them will remain here tonight. Then you will be worse off than ever before." So the king went out and took his seat at the town gate, and as the news spread throughout the town that he was there, everyone went to him. Meanwhile, the Israelites who had supported Absalom fled to their homes, and throughout all the tribes of Israel, there was much discussion and argument going on. The people were saying, "The king rescued us from our enemies and saved us from the Philistines, but Absalom chased him out of the country. Now Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, is dead. Why not ask David to come back and be our king again?" Then King David sent Zadok and Abiathar the priests to say to the elders of Judah, "Why are you the last ones to welcome back the king into his palace? For I've heard that all Israel is ready. You are my relatives, my own tribe, my own flesh and blood. So why are you the last ones to welcome back the king?" And David told them to tell Amasa, "Since you are my own flesh and blood, like Joab, may God strike me and even kill me if I do not appoint you as a commander of my army in his place." Then Amasa convinced all the men of Judah, and they responded unanimously. They sent word to the king, "Return to us and bring back all who are with you." So the king started back to Jerusalem, and when he arrived at the Jordan River, the people of Judah came to Gilgal to meet him and escort him across the river. Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin, hurried across with the men of Judah to welcome King David. 1,000 other men from the tribe of Benjamin were with him, including Ziba, the chief servants of the house of Saul, and Ziba's 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed down to the Jordan to meet the king. They crossed the shallows of the Jordan to bring the king's household across the river, helping him in every way they could. As the king was about to cross the river, Shimei fell down before him. "My lord, the king, please forgive me," he pleaded. "Forget the terrible thing your servant did when you left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. I know how much I have sinned. This is why I've come here today, the very first person in all Israel to greet my lord, the king." Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, "Shimei should die, for he cursed the Lord's anointed king." "Who asked your opinion, you sons of Zeruiah?" David exclaimed. "Why have you become my adversary today? This is not a day for execution, but for celebration. Today I'm once again the king of Israel." Then turning to Shimei, David vowed, "Your life will be spared." This really touched my heart when I see that. Now Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, came down from Jerusalem to meet David, the king. He had not cared for his feet, trimmed his beard, or washed his clothes since the day the king left Jerusalem. Why didn't you come with me? Mephibosheth, the king, asked him. Then Mephibosheth replied, My lord the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him, Saddle my donkey so I can go with the king. For as you know, I'm crippled. Ziba had slandered me by saying that I refused to come. But I know that my lord the king is like an angel of God, so do what you think is best. All my relatives and I could expect only death from you, my lord, but instead you have honored me to allow me to eat at your own table. What more can I ask? You have said enough, David replied. I've decided that you and Ziba will divide your land equally between you. Give him all of it, Mephibosheth said. I am content just to have you safely back again, my lord the king. But we know that's a lie because Mephibosheth had said that he was hoping that David would have been out the picture and that his grandfather, their family would have the throne once again. So we know that's a lie, but David did not reprimand neither of those people, Shimei or Mephibosheth. So now we're going to the point of what Barzillai said. So Barzillai of Gilead had come down from Rogelim to escort the king across the river Jordan. He was very old, about 80, and very wealthy. He was the one who had provided food for the king during his stay in Mahanaim. Come across with me and live in Jerusalem, the king said to Barzillai. I will take care of you there. No, he replied, I am far too old to go with the king to Jerusalem. I'm 80 years old today and I can no longer enjoy anything. Food and wine are no longer tasty, and I cannot hear the singers as they sing. So sad. I would only be a burden to my lord the king. Just go across the Jordan River with the king is all the honor I need. Then let me return again to die in my own town where my father and mother are buried. But here's your servant, my son, Kinham. Let him go with my lord, the king, and receive whatever you want to give him. Good, the king agreed. Kinham will go with me, and I will help him in any way you would like, and I will do for you anything you want. So the people crossed the Jordan with the king. After David had blessed Barzillai and kissed him, Barzillai returned to his own home. The king then crossed over to Gilgal, taking Kimham with him. All the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel escorted the king on his way. But all the men of Israel complained to the king. Then the men of Judah stole the king, and they said, the men of Judah stole the king and didn't give us the honor of helping you, your household, and all your men across the Jordan. The men of Judah replied, the king is one of your own kinsmen. Why should this make you angry? We haven't eaten any of the king's food or received any special favors. But there are 10 tribes in Israel, the others replied. So we have 10 tribes times as much right to the king as you do. What right do you have to treat us with such contempt? Weren't we the first to speak of bringing him back to be our king? The argument continued back and forth, and the men of Judah spoke even more harshly than the men of Israel. There happened to be troublemaker there named. So here we're going to go into chapter 20, and this is the revolt of Sheba. So there happened to be a troublemaker there named Sheba, son of Bichri, a man from the tribe of Benjamin. Sheba blew a ram's horn and began to chant, down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Come on, you men of Israel, back to your homes. So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed with their king and escorted him from the Jordan River to Jerusalem. When David came to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to look after the place and placed them in seclusion. Their needs were provided for, but he no longer slept with them. So each of them lived like a widow until she died. Then the king told Amasa, mobilize the army of Judah within 3 days and report back at that time. So Amasa went out to notify Judah, but it took him longer than the time he had been given. Then David said to Abishai, Sheba, son of Bichri, is going to hurt us more than Absalom did. Quick, take my troops and chase after him before he gets into a fortified town where we can't reach him. So Abishai and Joab, together with the king's bodyguard and all the mighty warriors, set out from Jerusalem to go after Sheba. As they arrived at the great stone in Gibeon, Amasa met them. Joab was wearing his military tunic with a dagger strapped to his belt. As he stepped forward to greet Amasa, he slipped the dagger from its sheath. How are you, my cousin? Joab said, and took him by the beard with his right hand as though to kiss him. Amasa didn't notice the dagger in his left hand. So Joab stabbed him in the stomach with it so that his insides gushed out to the ground. Joab did not need to strike again, and Amasa soon died. Joab and his brother Abishai left him lying there and continued after Sheba. One of Joab's young men shouted to Amasa's troop, If you are for Joab and David, come and follow Joab. But Amasa lay in his blood in the middle of the road, and Joab's man saw that everyone was stopping to stare at him. So he pulled him off the road into a field and threw a cloak over him. With Amasa's body out of the way, everyone went on with Joab to capture Sheba, son of Bichri. Meanwhile, Sheba traveled through all the tribes of Israel and eventually came to the town of Abel Beth Maachah. All the members of his own clan, the Bichrites, assembled for battle and followed him into the town. When Joab's forces arrived, they attacked Abel Beth Maachah. They built a siege ramp against the town's fortifications and began battering down the wall. But a wise woman in the town called out to Joab, Listen to me, Joab, come over here so I can talk with you. As he approached, the woman asked, Are you Joab? And he said, I am. So she said, Listen carefully to your servant. And he said, I'm listening. Then she continued, There used to be a saying, if you want to settle an argument, ask advice at the town of Abel. I'm the one who is peace-loving and faithful in Israel, but you're destroying an important town in Israel. Why do you want to devour what belongs to the Lord? And Joab replied, Believe me, I don't want to devour or destroy your town. That's not my purpose. All I want is a man named Sheba of Bichri from the hill country of Ephraim who has revolted against King David. If you hand this guy over to me, I will leave the town in peace. All right, the woman replied, we will throw his head over the wall to you. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn and called his troop back from the attack. They all returned to their homes, and Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. Now Joab was a commander of the army of Israel. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was captain of the king's bodyguard. Adoniram was in charge of the labor force. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the royal historian. Sheba was a court secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira, a descendant of Jair, was David's personal priest. So we can see how this woman, no-name woman, she was instrumental in saving the town. And so she influenced the people behind the wall in that town to kill Sheba and then give the head to Joab and his troop. So she saved the day. So chapter 21 reads, There was a famine during David's reign that lasted for 3 years. So David asked the Lord about it. And the Lord said, the famine has come because Saul and his family are guilty of murdering the Gibeonites. So the king summoned the Gibeonites. They were not part of Israel, but they were all that was left of the nation of the Amorites. The people of Israel had sworn not to kill them, but Saul, in his zeal for Israel and Judah, had tried to wipe them out. David asked them, What can I do for you? How can I make amends so that you will bless the Lord's people again? I don't know if anybody is noticing this. Sometimes when trouble come upon us, the best thing for us to do is to seek the Lord and ask him, what is the reason for this? If they had continued to be in famine, and because that's not from God, this famine was not from God, but if they had continued to be in famine, then it would be a waste of time for them to be suffering for no reason. But here we have David asking God, what is the reason for this famine? And we can see how God was answering him straight away. He didn't hesitate. And so this is a lesson to learn. Ask God, what is the situation, so we can learn from it. Well, money can't settle this matter between us and the family of Saul, the Gibeonites replied. Neither can we demand the life of anyone in Israel. What can I do then? David asked. Just tell me and I will do for you. Then they replied, it was Saul who planned to destroy us to keep us from having any place at all in the territory of Israel. So let 7 of Saul's sons be handed over to us, and we will execute them before the Lord at Gibeon on the mountain of the Lord. All right, the king said, I would do it. The king spared Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, who was Saul's grandson, because of the oath David and Jonathan had sworn before the Lord. But he gave them Saul's 2 sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, whose mother was Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. He also gave them the 5 sons of Saul's daughter, Merab, the wife of Adriel, son of Barzillai, from Meholah. The men of Gibeon executed them on the mountain before the Lord. So all 7 of them died together at the beginning of the barley harvest. Then Rizpah, daughter of Ai, the mother of the 2 men, spread burlap on a rock and stayed there the entire harvest season. She prevented the scavenger birds from tearing at their bodies during the day and stopped wild animals from eating them at night. When David learned what Rizpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went to the people of Jabesh Gilead and retrieved the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan. When the Philistine had killed Saul and Jonathan on Mount Gilboa, the people of Jabesh Gilead stole their bodies from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them. So David obtained the bones of Saul and Jonathan, as well as the bones of the men the Gibeonites had executed. Then the king ordered that they bury the bones in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, at the town of Zelah in the land of Benjamin. After that, God ended the famine in the land. So we can see it's twofold. God wanted Saul's family, those who were there, to be destroyed. And the reason for that is so that there will be no hindrance, even anyone, trying to go after the throne. But also God drew David's attention by causing famine in the land first. And then that's when David sought after the Lord to ask God, what is the reason for this? And then God was able to share why the famine was in existence. And then they were able to do something about it. So we can see that it's all right to ask God, if we're going through something, why is this happening? Maybe there's something we need to do about the situation. Maybe there's something we didn't do. And, sometimes we go along, and we don't even ask God anything. And we just suffer for no reason. If David hadn't asked God about the famine, then who knows, it could have prolonged. So it's very interesting and also good opportunity for us to learn from this experience of David, where a famine was, in existence throughout the entire land, and everybody else were suffering as a result. But God allowed it to happen because something needed to be done. And so we can see that there are times when God allows certain things to happen where we need to do something, but we just need to ask God about it. So once again, the Philistines were at war with Israel. And when David and his men were in the thick of battle, David became weak and exhausted. Ishbi-benob was a descendant of the giants. His bronze spearhead weighed more than 7 pounds, and he was armed with a new sword. He had cornered David and was about to kill him, but Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue and killed the Philistine. Then David's men declared, You are not going out to battle with us again. Why risk snuffing out the light of Israel? After this, there was another battle against the Philistine at Gob. As they fought, Sibbecai and Hushan killed Saph, another descendant of the giant. During another battle at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair from Bethlehem, killed the brother of Goliath of Gath. The handle of his spear was as thick as a weaver's beam. In another battle with the Philistines at Gath, they encountered a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all, who was also a descendant of the giant. But when he defied and taunted Israel, he was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimeah. These 4 Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. So we can see that, again, the Philistines were still at it, trying to destroy the Israelites. But God, again, gave David the victory. And it just shows us that our lives are never a bed of roses. Or a bed of roses. It's always something going on, and God will allow things to happen in our lives so that we can trust him, we can have that confidence in him, as well as we will not become complacent. We will always have a reason to seek the Lord. So again, we can see that David, he was weak and he was exhausted, but God allowed him to have the victory again. And so these warriors were killed as a result of God's intervention. So let's focus on chapter 20. It says in verse 18 to 19 of chapter 20 of 2 Samuel, then the woman said, in the past, people would say, ask for advice at Abel, and the problem will be solved. I'm one of the peaceful, loyal people of Israel. You are trying to destroy an important city of Israel. Why must you destroy what belongs to the Lord? So the question is, whose wise, godly counsel do you seek? Do we have anyone in our lives that we trust and who we think that will give us godly counsel? Or do we just go to anybody, whoever is available, whether they are godly or not? This is a key thing for us to understand, because if we go to someone who is godly, then we're going to get godly counsel. If we go to someone who is not, then the counsel will definitely be contrary. So another question that we could ask, and these are questions that are very good for introspection. Does anyone turn to you for such counsel? Are we in a position where we can provide godly counsel? That's a key thing for us to examine, because if nobody is asking us, that means we're not at a place where we should be. Perhaps God will not send us anyone to provide godly counsel to, because we're not godly ourselves. So that's something that we need to probably pay attention to, and I would say for us to examine ourselves about. So in terms of the application, Joab was ready to destroy an entire city in order to kill one bad seed, a man who had turned against King David. Instead of just standing by and letting this happen, a wise woman shouted out. She stood up for what is right. She stepped in and, in effect, saved the day. Joab listened to the voice of wisdom, because he could have turned a blind eye and pretend as if he didn't hear her. And sometimes, back in those days, sometimes women were not really looked at as, instrumental in helping with decisions. So the fact that he actually did that, he heard the woman's reasoning. And she actually asked him a very important question. She asked, why was he going to destroy what belonged to the Lord? And that was a very good question. The question was so potent that he had to listen. It got his attention. Why destroy the whole city instead of just killing one man he was after? And Joab agreed when the woman said they would toss the man's head over the wall to him. So these verses from 2 Samuel tells us that not only did the woman offer Joab wise counsel, but she also spoke wisely to all the people of the city, because if she didn't have a good argument or something worthwhile saying, then you know, the people in the city would not have killed Sheba and listened to what she said. So let's ask ourselves, are you bold enough to stand for what is right to protect human life and to offer wise counsel when it is needed? That is something that we need to check ourselves about. We need to see where we are falling short and to see whether or not we are advising good counsel, because sometimes we're not, and we're not in a place where we can even share with anybody what is right or what is wrong. So we need to ask God to help us to know when to speak up and to remain silent. As Solomon said, there's a time on this earth for everything. There's a time to speak and a time to be silent. As we know, there's a time for both, and it's often hard to discern the difference. It's often hard sometimes to know when to be silent and when to speak. But guess where we can find that answer? We can find that when we seek the Lord. God will inspire us to do what is right. And we need to ask God to help us to know when to go and when we need godly advice and who we need to go to, because sometimes we might be thinking that the person that is in our environment is the right person, but not necessarily, because sometimes the people who are around us are the ones who are the most critical. Sometimes they are not aligned with God's will for our lives, and sometimes they could be jealous. Sometimes they could be, just not in the right space. Sometimes they could be angry. They could be going through something themselves, and then they might not even give us counsel that will be beneficial. It could be biased. And sometimes people within our circle could also be people that cannot provide that type of challenge that we need. So it is important for us to really seek God and ask Him to show us who to go to and bring that person to us. Because sometimes the person may not necessarily be, somewhere near us, but God will probably send somebody random, just randomly, like say you're on the street and somebody just come to you and just say something to you, and you'll be like, wow, I never expect that. And I have experienced that. People have randomly come to me before and share things that I know is only God could have allowed that to happen, because they don't know me. They don't know anything about me. And for them to say things that were necessary for me to hear, whether it's an encouraging word, whether it's for me to know something that I probably didn't know, and to warn me about something. So God has His people everywhere. And even though it might seem trivial, but it is necessary for us to have wise counsel and for us to have godly counsel, not just wise. Because we might think it's wise in that person's eyes, but it's really godly, which has to come from God. Okay. So I hope that this has been very beneficial to us today, and we'll just pray and ask God to help us in all our endeavors. Lord, we thank you for today. Thank you for your word. Thank you for allowing us the privilege to read and to understand how necessary it is to have wise, godly counsel. Sometimes we might be listening to the wrong persons, listening to the wrong media, listen, or sources, whatever it is. But Lord, I thank you that we have your word, and this is the most important source. And at the same time, even if we need to speak to someone just to hear maybe an advice that is godly, I pray that you will send that person to us and that we don't have to rely on those who are necessarily around us who might lead us in the wrong path. Thank you for this reminder, and I pray that you'll just help us to walk closely to you so we can hear properly, clearly, the wise godly counsel that you want us to hear, and for us to make the right and proper choices. We thank you, and we leave everything in your hands and in your care. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a wonderful day.